This video features the legendary Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore as he explains why India will never follow the same path as China, and why China's development has surged while India continues to struggle. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. And don't forget to subscribe.
5 years ago at the founding dinner, you had predicted great things for China and India, and cited to India's secular democracy as key to its future success. 5 years on, I just wanted to ask your opinion on how well you think India's government is doing in separating religion and politics, and perhaps what advice could you give to India's new breed of leaders?
I think all the governments want your advice.
It's nearly as sensitive and difficult a question as the last one. But I'll give you my experience of India. I think despite all the failings, highly bureaucratic, red tape, inefficient linkages between central and state governments, unwieldy coalitions in the center and unwieldy coalitions in the states. The progress is made is quite remarkable. I mean, 6, 7, 8% growth. Once Manmohan Singh and Chidambaram opened up in the 90s after the IMF said, you've got to open up. I think India is under some constraints, not the result of the politicians, but the result of the nature of the constitution and the nature of the society. China is homogeneous, 90% Han. So when the president stands up and the TV is on, more than 90% understanding because the minorities are also learning Chinese, Putonghua. So given those constraints, it's done well. Any Indian leader speaking in any language at one time doesn't reach more than, say, 40%. You speak in Hindi, you might get the Hindi North. You speak in English, you get the upper classes throughout the country, maybe 30%. You speak in Tamil, you get 70 million in Tamil Nadu, and you speak in Malayalam, I don't know how many, 40 million. So that is an enormous diversity which makes it difficult to get the same policies through. And you can see that after each election you get a tussle of how to form governing coalitions. But on the other hand, because it's kept this constitution fluid, so a country with about 30, 40 different ethnic groups and 320 dialects and languages has held together. That's quite an achievement. Then you have the problem of the constitution. I was in Bombay 2 years ago, and this is a fact, and I don't think the Deputy Chief Minister will take offense at my recounting what actually took place and his position. So he asked me if I would spend 3 hours discussing how to make Bombay a world financial center. So I thought, well, why not? So he brought all his main ministers, state ministers, and his officials. Halfway through the dialogue, I asked him, who governs Bombay? He said, there's a committee that runs Bombay. I said, but who provides it with the revenue? He said, we do, the state government. What happens to Bombay's revenue? It goes to the state government. I said, then how do you dispense with that revenue? He says, well, we spread it throughout the Maharashtra state because there are so many farmers and so on, everybody has got to be looked after. I then said to him, if you want Bombay to become like Shanghai, Pudong, then you make it a self-governing unit, which the Chinese have done in Shanghai, in Tianjin, in Chongqing, and a few other cities recently. Then they deal direct with the central government. The central government gives them the funds for the infrastructure. And the revenue is shared with the central government, not with the... Shanghai doesn't share revenue with either Jiangsu or Zhejiang or any of the neighboring states. It shares it with the central government. And the central government has invested enormous sums of money to make it the dragon head that goes up the Yangtze River right up to the Tibetan mountains. And there was a period when you had empty building blocks, but it doesn't matter. I mean, the central government has decided this is going to be a great international center, and they set out to make it one, and now it is one. So I said, do that. He looked at me and says, what will happen to my farmers? I said, you just got to deal with the central government. He says, no, the central government won't give me anything more. So the discussion ended there. So I said, well, then how do you solve this airport, which is not world class? The road from the airport to the city, which is not what you expect of a first world financial center. And the city itself, the planning is not as good as it would be if it were governed separately. This can't be done. So 2 days later, I was in Delhi and I met the Prime Minister. I said, this problem can be solved. You see, it's China, make it an independent unit. The Prime Minister looked at me and said, you don't understand. I will never get this passed through Parliament. I said, why? You have to go to Parliament, yes. He said, all this requires an amendment in the legislation, in the Constitution, and that requires a 2/3 majority or something in the central government and in the states. We will never get it passed. So Bombay will always be at the mercy of the Maharashtra government, and the Maharashtra government, quite wisely, takes its revenue and gives it to the farmers because they are the people who voted them in. So until you break that chain, how do you break the chain? But the crucial question that the world wants to know is, having arisen or having fully developed, what kind of a China, what kind of power is it going to be? But you are now going to grow, let's say in 50 years, with an economy, total GDP more than America, easily more than Japan, but per capita still low. Can it have a peaceful rise? Quite possible. For 20, 30, 40 years. Will it be peaceful after it has risen?
This is Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father of Singapore and one of Asia's most visionary leaders. In this video, he shares his thoughts on China's rise and what the future holds for the country.
My name is Wang Yan, and currently an MPA student. I come from China, and to be specific, Jiangsu province, a place shares a lot with and owns a lot to you and to your country. My question is about real China versus imagined China. Because I doubt that there's an easy way for China to explain to the rest of the world what is really going on in this country, while itself is going through unprecedented transitions. Among all living leaders around the world, I think you are the only one that has been to China 30 times, I think, and that can speak excellent Chinese. So what does a real China look like in your eyes? And what are the major reasons that you believe how China sees itself and how the rest of the world, especially the West, sees China, are persistently out of alignment? Do you believe in a peaceful rise of China? And if you do, would you please kindly advise how China should act to effectively convince others that the rise of China is not a threat to the world? Thank you very much.
You get very difficult questions, man.
Yeah. I'll have to do a very carefully crafted thesis to answer you, which I'm not qualified to do. You live there, you've grown up there, you've been educated there. How can I know China better than you do? But just seeing China on 32 different visits over the last since 1976, that's about 33 years, I would say it's been a remarkable transformation. The China I visited in 1976 was dilapidated, down, grey, drab, everybody in the same mouth jackets, unlit streets. I was put up in the best hotel in Shanghai. I went down at night after dinner to see what it's like, and dark streets, unlighted shops, and whole streams of people. So you've got to keep on moving, otherwise you're holding everybody up. Overcrowded. Now you go to Shanghai, unbelievably, it's widened the roads, they've greened up the place, huge tremendous improvements in the infrastructure. So that's coastal China, and you can find that in Guangzhou, Dalian, Tianjin, all the coastal cities. I've also been to the interior. I've been to Lanzhou to see the caves in Dunhuang, and it was an arid place. It's got oil, and the oil has got to be shared with 1.3 billion people. So if Lanzhou were just looking after itself with its 40 million, it might be quite a wealthy little oil state. But it's not. So what is the real China? I think there are multiple real Chinas, depending, even within a province. But given the diversity of the country, the progress is made is quite outstanding. Can it have a peaceful rise? Quite possible. For 20, 30, 40 years. Will it be peaceful after it has risen? I cannot say. Because, every year since 1976, the relationship of China between Singapore and China, yes, it's good, it's friendly, but in 76, they were asking me questions about the free market, about many things. Now we are talking at a different level. I'm talking to people who read enormously and been briefed. So we are talking at a different level, and the relationship is at a more realistic level. You can't ask me with 4 million people to give advice to 1.3 billion people. I don't think it's wise anyway of me, and I'll cease to be friends if I do that. But I'll say what I think is good about China and a few things about what will hold it up. One, they've got the system going. When they say we will do this, it's done. The difference between India and China is stark. In India, Delhi can say, do that. But the chief minister says, you're not appointing me, I follow you. It's my voters who will make me the chief minister in the next election. So I say, yes, of course, but I don't do it. But in China, when you tell the party secretary, this must be done, and you don't do it, in the next reshuffle, you'll move sideways. So if you want to get up to the Politburo, you make sure it's a success. So you take Suzhou, all the I think there were 6 or 7 officials that we dealt with, and they were very able ones. They are now right at the top. 2 party secretaries, 1 member of the Politburo in charge of discipline and so on, a very important post. Because that's the way it is, the system works, because if you perform, I promote you. You don't perform, you're out. Sideways. So that's a systemic difference. The other thing that impresses me is the quality of the men that's coming up. 76, I met revolutionaries. You know, everywhere you went in the provinces, coming way and way. So the Revolutionary Committee greets you, and their sum total of knowledge is Marxism, Communism, Leninism, and Maoism. And now you're meeting a different generation. The younger you go, the more Western educated they are, the more they're familiar with the world, and the higher the quality, and I think they got the system in order. You have to retire at that age. 65 in the center, in the provinces, mayors retire at 60, party secretary 65, even in the center you're very good and you go on to 70. Now what is the bad side? Well, the bad side is, first, a dysfunctional system because of the corruption, a lot of unhappiness at lower levels. How to be rid of it? It's a very difficult job, because all communist countries face this problem. During the time when the economy was controlled, money is useless. You can have a lot of paper money, but you can't go, there's nothing in the shops. You go to the shops that your pecking order decides. I'm cadre first class, and I go hospital first class, shops first class, I buy all these things. You are cadre 9th class, and you go to a different kind of class. You are not even a cadre. Well, that's too bad. On one of my tours, this is where there's a bit of hypocrisy. One of the people who accompanied us was wearing this Mao suit. So I said, well, you see, I show you. He unbuttoned himself and said, fur line inside. If you're an ordinary fellow, you don't have a fur line Mao. You just shiver, you put on more layers of cotton. But they maintain this egalitarian look. Now the problem now is with that egalitarian look, the poor are being squeezed at lower levels, and they see little officials getting prosperous and leading a good life, and they are not in their land. They don't own the land, but nevertheless, having tilled the land, and they expect adequate compensation, and they don't get it, so you get riots. So I think there are serious problems of equity there, and with CCTV now, you can see how beautiful Beijing is, how beautiful Shanghai is, and I'm still in my mud house, or my mud hut. When is my turn? Nobody knows. I mean, maybe 50 years, 60 years, because the trickle-down effect will take a very long time. So the present leadership is putting all the infrastructure in the less developed areas, but can you convert it quickly? I don't think so. Educational levels are lower, cultural levels are lower, you've got to educate them. Teachers don't want to go to such provinces, good teachers, because where are the facilities for your children's education and hospitals and so on? So it'll be a problem getting them up to speed. So corruption, inequality, And misbehavior, especially at lower levels, will lead to all kinds of problems, which can be contained because they've got a very powerful apparatus. People's security police, the army, the party. But if you want a country to progress, you must carry the people with you at all levels, which they did when they shared misery. But now the prosperity is not shared equally. I mean, you are here, you're from Jiangsu, it's one of the prosperous provinces. You're well dressed, you're well educated, you speak English. If you were in Lanzhou or Xinjiang, I don't think you'll have a chance to travel and be in Singapore. So these disparities will be serious problems. So the internal problem is the most important single difficulty you must attend to. Peaceful rise, it is in China's interest to grow in a peaceful environment. If you are engaged in wars or conflicts, you won't grow. I mean, you see Vietnam. From 1945 to 1991, they were engaged in a series of wars. Nearly broke them. Now they are recovering. It took a long time. And the Chinese know this. This generation has been through hell. Great leap forward, hunger, starvation, near collision with the Russians over the Amur River, cultural revolution, gone mad. So they said, okay, we've got a chance now to join the other countries at the top. Let's not disturb this opportunity. So hence this concept of peaceful rise. I met the party school vice principal. He asked me to speak to the students once. So I said, you know, if I were you, I would not use the word peaceful rise in English. It sounds all right in Chinese, 崛起, but in English it means you're rising, it's like a mushroom, you know, you scare people. Why not say cultural renaissance, that you're going back to Tang Dynasty or Sung Dynasty or Han Dynasty, a restoration of your cultural efflorescence. That will make people concentrate on the cultural side. So they now settle for peaceful development. I see they've moved away from peaceful rise. I have no doubts that they will have a peaceful, they want a peaceful rise. This generation. But the grandchildren may think that they have already arrived, and then they begin to flex their muscles, and then you will have a very different China. So I put this question to them. They said, no, it won't happen. We'll tell them. We'll teach them all the lessons. You know, the grandchildren never listen to grandfathers. So that's one problem. The other problem is a more crucial one. If you start off in the belief that the world has been unkind to you, that the world has exploited you, that the imperialists have devastated you, you know, looted Beijing, done all this to you. One day you get to the top table, you'll square accounts. Well, that's no good. I think you must get a generation to grow up and say, look, you're not going back to old China when you were just the only power in the world, as far as you know. Rome was far away. And the Silk Road, well, you can't invade each other. But you are now going to grow, let's say in 50 years, with an economy, total GDP more than America, easily more than Japan, but per capita still low. But you are just one of many other powers, many of them more innovative, more inventive, more resilient in meeting with changes in technology and changes in social lives and so on. So I tell my American friends, if I were you, I wouldn't worry about them today, democracy and so on. Leave it to them. You've got tens of thousands of bright Chinese students in America. You give them a bad impression, a bad time, they'll go home nursing a grievance. You accept them as friends and say, look, this is one world, global warming. We will be in trouble, you will be in trouble. AIDS, terrorism, chemical weapons, nuclear weapons. It's a different world. China will not be the sole power. But sometimes, I'm not talking about people at the top, I think they understand this. But the people at the bottom, middle ranges, I mean, when the Deputy Prime Minister, our Deputy Prime Minister, who's now Prime Minister, went to Taiwan, the barrage of vicious articles on him on the internet from young students was intense. Suddenly, from a good old friend, we became a brand new enemy. Overnight. No, that gives us cause for reflection. So I said to some of my Chinese friends, I said, look, you know, you better tell your young people, if you say we are old friends, then we have to stay old friends for a long time. You can't say, suddenly I do something which you don't like and we become an enemy. I'm not sure if they can get the young people to understand that, because they are growing up in a different China. A China which they feel is going to come up very quickly, 崛起. I'm not sure it's going to come up without troubles. I think enormous social problems will crop up, disparity, corruption, all kinds of problems. But the crucial question that the world wants to know is, having arisen, or having fully developed, what kind of a China, what kind of power is it going to be? Because by then you'll be 1,500 million or 600 million, educated, organized. It can become. Now they keep on saying, we are not going to be a hegemon. Never. No, I believe it for their lifetime. But as I think of the young attacking us, I think overnight I became an enemy. How is that? So I explained it to my friends. I said, no, when you do that, you annoy 1.3 billion people. 13亿. That caused me to pause again. So when you annoy me, you only annoyed 4 million people. But I thought you said all countries big and small are the same. So I begin to have doubts about that. But never mind, I think it is still in the formative stage. And if I were America, Europe and Japan, I would spend time to make sure that the mindset of the younger generation is not one of hostility, but one of acceptance and an understanding that you are now a stakeholder, which was Bob Zwedik's very apt description of their role. When they were called a stakeholder, they asked me, what is a stakeholder? I said, it means you got a stake in it, and if it goes down, you will lose money. So after some time, they said, yeah, that's right. So stakeholders are a good idea. So make them feel they're stakeholders, and if this earth goes warm, they're in as much trouble as anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you.